Okay, thanks everyone. Again, I'm Amanda Fischer. I'm Policy Director and COO of Better Markets. Just a few housekeeping items before I get into a brief presentation. For those lucky enough to be here in the room, there is lunch. They are setting it up now. When I am done, feel free to go serve yourself buffet style, and you can either eat across the hall standing up, or you can come over here and eat back in the room. And to those viewing virtually, sorry. I can't help you there. And then in the latter half of the lunch presentation, we'll be joined by John Donnenberg, who's the staff director for Ranking Member Warren on the Senate Banking Committee, to talk about the fall agenda and how folks like our academic advisory board members can better reach policymakers and make sure that their scholarship gets into the hands of decision makers. So I am afraid I don't have the clicker. I am not sure where it went for the slide presentation. All right.
I tried to get it to your phone.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I'm just going to use this time to briefly talk about the work of our academic advisory board members and the work of Better Markets and how they integrate and really seek to have impact in the public discussion about what financial regulation means and who it's here to serve. I would be remiss without starting off to acknowledge our co-chair, Simon Johnson, and his wonderful book, Power and Progress, which, as Dennis mentioned earlier, led to him receiving the Nobel Prize last year. So thanks so much to Simon. You'll be hearing from him later in the day. So first, I want to talk about how our scholars represented here today and Better Markets have really been at the forefront of documenting the causes of the 2008 crisis and proposing solutions to address the fundamental fragilities revealed by that crisis. As Dennis mentioned earlier today, this event today coincides with Better Markets' 15th year anniversary. We were founded in the wake of the 2008 crisis as Congress debated and enacted reform legislation after the subprime crash. Better Markets was designed to be a counterweight to the financial services industry's heavy lobbying that sought to bend the lawmaking and rulemaking processes in the favor of the industry. Like the scholars represented on our academic advisory board, Better Markets represents the public interest before policymakers and the media, leveraging deep technical and legal expertise to document, highlight, and uplift not just regulatory debates, but the public discourse around what financial regulation means and who it's designed to serve. It would be impossible to cover the waterfront of our scholars and Better Markets work during this short interlude, but I wanted to draw some attention to highlights over the past 15 years. First, again, understanding the consequences and causes of the crisis is essential. And one thing that our academic advisory board and Better Markets understands is the power of storytelling. Accurately documenting the sources of the 2008 crisis and the subsequent blowups is a necessary predicate to getting the public to understand what reforms are needed. The books cited here are just a few examples of seminal work that sought to tell the story of the crisis, both the economic mechanisms that facilitated it and also the personalities that caused it and the real people who suffered from it. And I think both our scholars and Better Markets do a really good job of integrating not just economic and legal analysis, but real stories in order to share with the media and policymakers what really happened. Better Markets, again, has sought to document the long shadow of the 2008 crisis, where a decade later, as Dennis pointed out earlier, 90% of Americans were poorer than they were in 2007. And Fed data released just this morning actually showed that the top 1% of US earners in the United States now have more wealth than the middle class, which the Fed defined as earners between the 20th and 80th percentile of earners. So, much work has been done in the past 15 years, but much work remains. And Better Markets' cost of the crisis report was one of the few comprehensive documents to try and estimate the reverberations of the crisis, and not just jumps in unemployment, but also the scarring effects of graduating into a recession or retiring into a recession. After understanding the crisis, I think it's really important to document how our scholars and how better markets got involved in some of the biggest post-crisis fights. As a bank lobbyist famously said after the passage of Dodd-Frank, it's halftime. And, they took that mandate seriously, and the rule writing process was the back half of that game. So our scholars in better markets have been front and center at some of the biggest post-crisis fights over how to reform the system. I would be remiss not to point out Anant Admani's book, The Banker's New Clothes, which was on a singular mission to describe the nature of bank capital to the media and policymakers. To this day, every time I see a headline refer to bank capital as a lockbox or a rainy day fund that needs to be unleashed, much less than I used to in the past, granted, I sigh, I roll my eyes, and I think of Anant. Art Wilmarth, too, leverages his understanding of the financial structures that created the Great Depression to make striking parallels to what happened in 2008 and, unfortunately, what's currently happening in crypto right now. And Jeremy Kress, who we just heard from on the previous panel, has uniquely situated his scholarship at the intersection of the legal academy and public policy making, rethinking, as one example, the bank merger framework, which led to legislation being introduced in the Senate, and advising the Justice Department in the Biden administration. Jeremy's academic sabbatical this semester, I think, strikes fear in the hearts of deregulation champions across the country because he has more time on his hands now. Better Markets has leveraged and added to this work with our dogged focus on bank capital and liquidity rules, resisting the inevitability of bailouts, explaining how stronger bank regulation is a facilitator of growth rather than a drag on it, and trying our best to counterweight the onslaught of 30-second ads run during college football bowl game season. We have new challenges on our hands now, as the last panel discussed. The independence of the Federal Reserve may already be gone, or we could be, on its last gasps. Scholars like Emma Coleman Jordan, who, years ago documented how the Fed's hidden structures contributed to inequality. Lev Manand, who has been a foremost scholar on this topic and has been doing a ton of media to speak to the public about these topics. I'm singling out his work with Kate Judge here and Better Markets' presence in the media, talking about how the Fed has really served some of our society very well over the last 15 years, but has a long way to go to really serving its purpose of benefiting all Americans. The other big fight that is upon us now are the growing perils of finance and technology and its intersection. I have some of our other scholars here highlighted. Hillary Allen, I think, has done more to educate policymakers in DC about the perils of the crypto market than just about anyone. She's probably testified before Congress so many times that they should engrave her name on one of the chairs to make it easier when she goes up there. And it is so refreshing to hear such a clear and potent voice get called up to educate policymakers. And a reason that much worse legislation has not passed yet is probably because of Hillary's scholarship and willingness to share her knowledge. Both Gina Gale Fletcher and Vicky Bogan have testified in Congress about phenomena of meme stocks, the surge in retail day trading, and the gamification of financial markets, particularly during and after the COVID pandemic. It is not often that you can find someone that can both publish in the top academic journals and also explain the concept of roaring kitty to Netflix, but we appreciate, get you some scholars that can do both. There's way too much that the Academic Advisory Board members and Better Markets have done to discuss in the time allotted. But again, here are some of the books I wanted to just highlight written by folks on our Academic Advisory Board. Marisa Baradaran, in her second book that just came out last year. Pat McCoy also has a book recently out. And Joe Stiglitz, along with Kate Judge's book that Dennis mentioned earlier, and Simon's book. So all of this work plus additional resources will be available on our post-conference website. I urge everyone to check it out. When I worked on Capitol Hill, I would create a syllabus for new people entering the topic of financial regulation, and many of these materials would be on that syllabus. So it is a great place to start if you want to learn more about these topics. And thank you so much. I will pause there. And again, lunch is behind us. Thanks.